Nostalgia. Most everyone loves it, but not everyone lives it quite like President Trump. He may be running for re-election in 2020, but President Trump is living in 1950, back when father knew best. In a tone-deaf plea to suburban women yesterday, he said this.
I'm getting your kids back to school. Get your kids back to school. You know what else? I'm also getting your husbands. They want to get back to work, right? They want to get back to work. We're getting your husbands back to work.
He seems to miss that decades ago, women joined the workforce en masse, and now they actually account for the majority of it. The current recession is hurting them more than men. Layoffs happening in sections of the economy where women are disproportionately represented. And 1 in 4 women report they're considering leaving the workplace or cutting back time because the burden of the pandemic is falling more on working moms. But this is hardly the first time the president has shown he thinks of women as waiting all day at home for their husbands to return from their breadwinning careers. In his false claims that Joe Biden and the Democrats will destroy the suburbs, which, by the way, are more diverse than ever, he refers to women who live there as housewives. Even in his interviews from the 90s, his outdated view of the world was clear.
I think that putting a wife to work is a very dangerous thing. I have days where if I come home and, I don't want to sound too much like a chauvinist, but when I come home and dinner's not ready, I go through the roof.
Now, more recently, when asked about investigations of his Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, over accusations that Pompeo had staffers perform personal chores, here's what Trump said.
Look, he's a high-quality person. Mike, he's a very high quality, he's a very brilliant guy. And now I have you telling me about dog walking, washing dishes. And you know what? I'd rather have him on the phone with some world leader than have him wash dishes because maybe his wife isn't there or his kids are there,
Of course, saying a man should never wash a dish when a woman's around to do it fell out of vogue in politics long ago. Back in May, when the president was still having coronavirus briefings during a pandemic, he singled out 2 CBS reporters who he felt were unfair to him, Weijia Zhang and Paula Reed. He told the New York Post, quote, "It wasn't Donna Reed, I can tell you that, Paula Reed. She's sitting there and I say, how angry? I mean, what's the purpose? They're not even tough questions, but you see the attitude of these people, it's like incredible." Donna Reed, the good wife from It's a Wonderful Life, and the housewife from her self-titled 1950s sitcom. Her husband on the show was a doctor. She managed the housework and getting dinner on the table. They had 2 kids, 1 boy, 1 girl. They were white. Life was practically perfect if you ignore the injustice happening outside their suburban neighborhood. And as they say, ignorance is bliss. The president certainly seems to think so. His penchant for the black and white era also includes movies. Here he is longing for something other than the foreign language film Parasite that won Best Picture at the Oscars this year.
What the hell was that all about? We got enough problems with South Korea with trade. On top of it, they give him the best movie of the year. Was it good? I don't know. I'm looking for where, let's get Gone with the Wind. Can we get Gone with the Wind back, please? Sunset Boulevard. So many great movies.
Gone with the Wind, which romanticizes slavery and the antebellum South. It's a bad look for a president living in an age of reckoning over racism. And I guess he also missed the part where even Scarlett O'Hara got a job managing a business. Last year, when Pete Buttigieg was running for president, Trump told Politico that, quote, Alfred E. Newman cannot be president of the United States. Alfred E. Newman was a fictional character from the 1950s whose face there was synonymous with Mad Magazine. Buttigieg said he had to Google it because he didn't know who Alfred E. Newman was. Recently, Trump also took a jab at Dr. Anthony Fauci with another outdated reference, saying that Fauci gets more airtime than Bob Hope. Bob Hope, who died in 2003, is an icon, no doubt, but he was in his 50s in the 1950s. And it's not just Trump. It's the folks he's surrounded himself with. Listen to his former campaign chairman, who later was convicted and sent to prison. Here Paul Manafort was back in 2016, trying to explain why women voters would flock to Trump.
Many women in this country feel they can't afford their lives. Their husbands can't afford paying for the family bills.
You know what you just said, Howard? You said women are concerned about their husband's income. Do you think
I can speak personally to that.
21st century talking? That's their big concern, how their husband's doing at work?
Because they can't afford their lives anymore.
Yeah.
That's the point. It's not some people, it's a matter of jobs.
But the president's 1950s worldview extends far beyond the household. He once cited the 40s and 50s as a time when, quote, we were not pushed around, we were respected by everybody, we had just won a war, we were pretty much doing what we had to do. He also talks as if steel and coal are the future of the U.S. economy. In fact, many of his meetings look like a steel company board from the 50s, all white men. He denies systemic racism exists. He touts Confederate symbols. His version of exercise is golfing with a cart. Even his go-to pose harkens back to another tough guy from a sitcom set in the 50s. And he waxes nostalgic for the heyday of the highway featured in malt shops and the grapes of wrath.
For many decades, Route 66 captured the American spirit. The communities along this historic route were a vivid symbol of America's booming industry.
But as the Eagles once said, coincidentally during the height of second-wave feminism, don't let the sound of your own wheels drive you crazy. His nostalgia for the 50s is obstructing his understanding of the present-day suburbs. It's 2020. Lassie's not coming to save us, and June Cleaver's not waiting at home with meatloaf.